So, why Hitler reached Moscow in 1941? The explanation Stalin gave was that the Germans were better armed. So, this is they have more tanks, more airplanes, more of everything. That was the explanation Stalin gave. And when Khrushchev came to power, he agreed with the Stalin explanation, but he added another one.
Oh.
Also, because Stalin executed 40,000 Soviet officers, and the army was left without officers. The new officers were inexperienced, and this is why we lost in 1941. The combination of these two explanations was okay.
Cheers.
Lasted until the end of the Soviet Union.
Can I get another one? Is it too late?
It's too late.
Oh.
And since that was the only information that came from behind the Iron Curtain to the West, the Western scholars repeated uncritically these things. And today, if you go to a random library in the West, the chances are that you will find a book where the success of the Germans in 1941, reaching Moscow, is explained in terms of the Germans being better armed than the Soviets and Stalin decapitating his army before the war.
But not actually beheading them.
No, they were not beheaded. Decapitation of the army, that's a metaphor. Nobody was decapitated, they were supposedly shot.
Yeah, but it sounds like they took a big sword and just like sliced all their heads off all in one go.
Well, we covered this in another podcast.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm still very confused. It's very misleading.
Stalin
is very misleading.
Well, it was his job to be misleading.
He looks so nice and smiley with his crinkly eyes and his big moustache.
Yeah, unlike Hitler, who was an obvious villain, an obvious wolf, Stalin was a wolf in sheepskin.
Yeah.
And these are more dangerous.
Hitler is not somebody I would want to sit next to in the bus. He looks very unpredictable. Well, at first you don't know that, but he seems very unpredictable. However, Stalin, Uncle Joe, he looks really nice and smiley and, borderline cuddly. Like you would talk to him in the bus if you were stuck in a traffic jam. But Hitler, no, he would always change seats.
Anyway, both of these explanations were debunked. And they were debunked a long time ago, actually, decades ago.
Oh.
But the problem is that when thousands of books have repeated the same thing, these books don't disappear overnight. There are other authors that quote those books, and eventually this thing becomes the conventional wisdom. And this is why still, if you find a random source, it will tell you the explanation that was given by Stalin. We didn't have enough weapons, remember? And by Khrushchev, yes, we didn't have enough weapons, and Stalin decapitated the army. Now, regarding the decapitation, because any random guy on YouTube can say whatever he likes, so let's back what I'm saying. The original documents, back up. Yes.
Thank you.
The original documents were published after the fall of the Soviet Union in the Военно-исторический журнал. That's the official journal of the Russian army. The documents were declassified and published. And it turns out there was no decapitation. Sure, Stalin exterminated tens of millions of people, but when it came to officers, to Red Army officers, the number was very small. And also he executed those who actually were unruly, who were untalented. The Red Army was better without them. And when it comes to the Soviet army being not well armed, this was debunked as well. It turns out the Soviet army was way, way better armed than the German army.
Oh.
So the Soviet army, the Red Army at the time, it was called Red Army. It was still not renamed to the Soviet army. The Red Army had 9 times more tanks, and what's more, the Soviet tanks were far superior quality. Yes, you heard this correctly. People don't expect to hear this. They expect the Germans to be
Yes.
technologically advanced, the Russians to be these Ivans to be able only to drink vodka and to
Yes. Nastarovia.
yes.
Cheers.
It was very different actually, and this is, by the way, this over preparedness when it came to weapons, paradoxically, is why Stalin lost in 1941. It turns out if you prepare too well, you can actually lose the war because of that. And Stalin almost lost the war in 1941. So how this came about? Well, the explanation is very simple. This staggering technological advantage that the Soviet Union enjoyed over Germany was achieved at the expense of the Soviet people. The standard of living in the Soviet Union was so low that the Soviet people were actually driven to cannibalism.
Oh.
Cannibalism
Cannibalism.
with a C, yes.
Oh.
Yes. I mean, people expect when they are talking about cannibalism in the 20th century, they expect to hear Central Africa or Papua New Guinea or something, some other destination like this. Actually, most of the cannibalism happened in the Soviet Union. There were several waves of cannibalism in the Soviet Union because millions of people were starving to death. And when people are starving to death, some people are so desperate that they begin to eat corpses. And some are so desperate and ruthless that they begin actually to kill other people in order to eat them.
Hold on. So wait a minute. I'm not clear on this. There was no food. But there's farms over there. Obviously, they make wheat and grain, and they have animals, sheep, chicken, eggs. What happened to those?
Well, the three big waves of starvation, starvation were organized by the authorities. It was forced starvation. So the first one was
Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
in the 20s under Lenin,
Excuse
the
me?
second one was in the early 30s under Stalin, and the third one was after the war
Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
in the 40s again under Stalin. All these were organized by Moscow. They were not because there was not enough grain to feed the people.
What did Moscow do? Did Moscow steal the grain from the people?
Actually,
close
they
down
did.
shops, or
Actually,
limit
they did. Yes.
rations?
Actually, they did. They
Wow.
they stole the grain from the peasants. Actually, this
Wow.
was done on purpose.
On purpose.
Yes.
My goodness.
And this is again not new information, and
It's new for me.
this has been acknowledged in mainstream credible academic sources, like for example the book of Robert Conquest on the subject, which contains harrowing examples of children killing other children in order to eat them, to drink their blood. I mean, stuff that in the West would be from a horror movie.
They were like vampires eventually.
Well, they were starving, they were dying. They were desperate to eat something.
I can't imagine being so hungry that firstly I'd want to kill somebody for their meat and then to drink their blood.
Well, this with the drinking usually those who killed others in order to eat their corpses, they would usually eat the meat, not drink the blood. But I remember one of the cases that Robert Conquest mentions is about several children which attacked the weakest child among them and began to drink his blood.
Oh no.
So, the bottom line, the Soviet Union cared for only one thing in the 30s, production of weapons. The whole economy was centered around this. Nothing else mattered. All these all this industrial might that the Soviet Union built at the time was about production of weapons. And this is why at the beginning of the war, the Soviet Union had plenty of weapons. The Soviet Union had more tanks than all the other countries put together at the time. Not to mention the other types of weaponry like artillery and airplanes and handguns and all the rest, not to mention the ammunition. That the production capacity of the Soviet Union in this respect was colossal. But all this was achieved at the expense of the Soviet people who hated their own government. And it turns out that weapons don't fight, people do. And all these excellent weapons were ditched when the Germans invaded the Soviet Union, because the Red Army soldiers hated their own government. Half of the Red Army actually surrendered to the Germans, the soldiers and the officers. They were hoping to fight against their own government on the side of the Germans. Hitler was met as a liberator in the Soviet Union, until eventually they learned that Hitler is just more of the same, that Hitler is no better than Stalin. But at first they didn't know that. In 1941 they didn't know that. So usually these events, for example, the starvation in 1933 and the outbreak of the German-Soviet war in 1941, they usually discussed in different books. So somebody would study, some scholar would write about the war, other would write about the forced starvation, the extermination of the 7 million Ukrainians in 1933. But they are part of the same story. They are separated only in our minds. In reality, the Red Army soldiers in 1941 had members of their family or extended family who were murdered by the regime. So they hated the regime.
Yeah.
I mean, would you expect the Jews to fight for Hitler?
Never, no.
Well, why would then the Ukrainians or even the Russians fight for Stalin?
When you mention Ukrainians, you also talking about Holodomor?
Yes, Holodomor is the Ukrainian word for the Holocaust that Stalin organized against the Ukrainian people in 1933. Actually, by the way, it was not just Ukrainians. There were also, there were mostly Ukrainians, but there were also Russians and Kazakhs who were murdered in this way in 1933.
But those who were still alive, did they also succumb to cannibalism?
Well, most people who were starving to death simply starved to death. The percentage of those who engaged in cannibalism was actually low.
Okay.
But given that tens of millions of people were starving, these low percentages translated into thousands upon thousands of cannibals.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
That's pretty scary, because it could be my next door neighbour or someone across the road.
Yes, it could be.
Or an extended family. Oh my goodness.
And the situation was so bad that there was actually an instruction given to the secret police how to deal with cannibals. And
vampires.
Well, they were not vampires. I
To
mean,
drink the blood.
everybody is smart until the problem comes to bites his ass. As
Or bite them in the neck.
yeah.
Vampires usually bite in the neck from the movies I've seen.
Not in the ass. Yeah, these are different movies.
It's a different kind of movie. Wink, wink. Okay.
Wink, wink. Yes. As what was the name of this boxer? Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson.
So he famously said.
1997.
He famously said everybody has a plan until he is hit in the teeth.
I thought you meant when he bit Evander Holyfield's ear in 1997. I remember that.
I don't remember
He
when
bit
this
his ear
happened.
off.
But
Bit his
anyway,
ear off.
the thing is that it's very easy for us who are well fed. I just had my dinner, by the way.
I didn't, and I'm vegetarian.
To be horrified by cannibalism. The people who were engaging in cannibalism, they were people like us.
Cannibalism.
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 Thank you.
they didn't they were not born
No.
cannibals. They were made cannibals. And I bet if the same happens in a Western country, there will be plenty of people who will succumb to cannibalism. Because humans all over the world biologically are more or less the same.
They have the instinct to survive
They have an instinct to
and
survive,
protect
yes.
themselves or their immediate family,
Yes, exactly.
clan.
For example, there was this another case that Robert Conquest mentions in his book of this mother who was caught preparing the father in order to feed, cooking the father in order to feed the children. And when the authorities wanted to bury the what was remaining of the father, she didn't want to give it to them because he is ours. And there was another mother who instructed. There were mothers who would kill one of the children in order to feed the rest, and there was this mother who instructed her children after she dies of starvation to eat her in order to survive. This is what was happening in the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union, because everything was focused on production of weapons, actually was losing in 1941. This was the reason.
I can't imagine ever being so hungry I would want to eat another person.
Well, you can't imagine because you've never been so hungry. That's the point.
But for me, there's always food. There's always a supply of food in the shops. There's always food in the kitchen cupboard, in the fridge or the freezer. There's always something. Even if it's just basic pasta, beans, rice, there's always something to survive. I can't imagine all that being gone. For me, my neighbours and people in my city.
As far as I know, all people living on Earth today are descendants of cannibals.
Oh no.
There was this study, I don't remember the details, which was a genetic study. There were some genetic markers, I don't remember the details, that show in the genotype only if a human has eaten meat from another human. I don't remember the details. You could Google it. And those who conducted the study expected that certain people will show that they're descendants of cannibals, and others are not. It turned out all people whose genotypes were studied during this study turned out to be descendants of cannibals.
Oh.
So in prehistory, more or less, the cannibals survived, and those who were honest and didn't eat human flesh, they died out.
Died. Didn't survive. Okay.
And this is the Soviet history. This is socialism. People in the West, when they hear the word socialism, they imagine free healthcare or free education.
Equality for all.
Actually, the experiment has been done, and every time it results in concentration camps, secret police, cannibalism, and all that, closed borders, mass murder. This is how socialism works. Okay, shall we end here?
Edit this part out. Something about for socialism to work, fear and interest, something like that. Just to end on it. I don't know. Keep going.
Yeah. So people are surprised why the results are like this. They assume that it must have been some accident because Stalin, because Lenin, because Hitler. These were not true socialists. Actually, the world is driven by two forces. This is a thought attributed to Napoleon. I don't know whether he said it to somebody else, doesn't matter. The forces are fear and interest. And because socialism ends the private property, it means that it ends interest. People are no longer working for their bottom line, they are working for the bottom line of the government. So they have no interest. And what remains to make them work? Well, obviously the other thing. What was the other thing?
A big bonus.
No, fear.
Oh.
Fear. The fear and interest. You remove the interest, what remains?
Yeah,
Fear.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why socialism is based on fear. It cannot be based on anything else. Because if you remove both the interest and the fear,
Mm-hmm.
people simply stop working.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is how it is. It's very simple.
Mm.
It's on the surface. You don't need to be a genius in order to get it. Yeah?
And how do you know this
How do I know what?
about socialism?
Well, I was born under socialism to begin with.
Where?
People's Republic of Bulgaria.
Aha.
And I experienced forced labor and all that. The whole population had to work periodically. I've never been to a concentration camp.
Mm-hmm.
The concentration camps were phased out in the 60s in Bulgaria under Khrushchev, but the forced labor remained.
Mm.
For example, in the army, the soldiers were made to work for free out of fear. The school boys and girls were sent to the so-called brigades in order to pick up the crop or
Pick crops.
pick the crops.
And the little roses you told me about.
That as well,
Was
yes.
this the pioneers?
Yes, pioneers and then Komsomol members and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And also periodically the people who were in there working whenever, for example, office workers, other workers, they would be sent on these brigades.
Uh-huh.
So the forced labor existed until 1989 in Eastern Europe, but of course it was a very mild variant of what existed in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So after Stalin was removed from power, the system became much milder. But to the end, it was based on fear. And when Gorbachev removed the fear, everything crumbled. That was it. End of the road.
To be continued, boys and girls.